Yes, but I do think Republicans have their degree of corruption, as evidenced by this story from Timcast.com. Candidate Robby Starbuck responds to being kicked off Tennessee ballot. Starbuck told Timcast he is exploring every legal option to remain in the congressional race. That's right. They tried passing this law to bump him and another individual off the ballot by saying they didn't live there long enough. Turns out Robby actually did live in this district long enough. Right. Now I guess they're claiming he's not a Republican.
What?
Robby Starbuck, Morgan Ortagus, and Baxter Lee were all disqualified from the upcoming primary after the party's vote on April 19th that they did not meet its standards for bona fide Republicans. Their candidacy was challenged earlier this month, triggering a vote by the state election committee. According to the bylaws, a candidate is required to have voted in 3 of the last 4 Republican primaries or have state Republicans vouch for them. Quote, "The idea that I am not a Republican is most offensive because if I am not, who the hell is?" Starbuck said. Starbuck, he apparently said, let me see if I can find the quote, that he's been, the 33-year-old said he had 14 vouching letters affirming his status as a Republican, including statements from several county party chairs and the leader of the Nashville Young Republicans. He was also endorsed by U.S. Senator Rand Paul in 2021.
Wow.
Starbuck largely attributed the party's vote to institutional corruption, believing that Republican leaders in the state would prefer a controllable rhino.
Right.
This is how the system works. In order to get into office, it's through one of the 2 parties. The parties are private organizations who can do whatever they want. So they are blocking Robby Starbuck from being able to run because he's a real candidate.
Well, and this goes to my point. So there are probably a lot of conservatives in Tennessee, and we may presume, well, Tennessee, that's got to be conservative down there. Well, that Republican Party leadership has been a long time moderate operation. I mean, the Republicans from Tennessee, at least in the Senate, haven't been as hardcore as I would have liked. And this is why people should participate in party politics. You can't spit from the outside and expect the party to change. If you're a Democrat, get involved in Democratic politics. If you're a Republican, get involved in Republican politics. If you don't, that's what happens.
Yeah, I wonder if it's also because of Nashville being in Tennessee. Whenever you have a large urban center like that, it skews your elections to the left.
And you get fake Republicans.
Yeah.
Well, Robby's definitely a Republican. I know the guy. I've looked him in the eyes. I mean, I'm kind of being facetious, Robby. Okay.
But he is.
What you just said for people to get into politics, I cannot fathom how to fix the system from within the system because the system is busted. It's like being on a broken train that's about to go off a cliff. If you have the chance to fix it from above and you can actually see the whole train and fix the tracks, now we're talking. But if you want to get on board, man, how can you fix the train and the tracks from inside?
Well, it's the same thing about the school board fight. You have to be at the table in order to affect the debate. And you show up at these meetings, they're usually boring. And you show up at political meetings, and a lot of people don't. And if you do and you're principled, you can go far. And because people need bodies. And before you know it, you're the county chair. Before you know it, you're on the state executive committee of the party. And before you know it, you're in a position to certify someone like Robby Starbuck onto a ballot or oppose someone who shouldn't be on the ballot. So it works both ways. And, we want the parties to be strong. Our establishment wants the parties to be weak and to kind of have a vanilla flavor throughout the system. And if you want distinctions and you want activism, you got to learn how to win. I mean, and way to do that is by participating in the process.
You need activism. The left is really good at organizing phone call and postcard letter campaigns. What are Republicans going to do right now after what they're doing to these candidates, namely Robby Starbuck? Because this is BS. They're just lying, saying he's not a Republican so that they can boot him off the ballot. Well, every Republican needs to figure out how to organize. Every individual who believes in Robby Starbuck and is sick of the corruption in this machine, staring in the face of it, needs to get organized and figure out something. Because I'll tell you what the left would do. They wouldn't stop calling. Huh. You would get 50 leftists, and they would just hit redial and then wait for the phone to answer and then start complaining when they hang up, hit redial again, and their phones would be off the hook. And just 50 people.
Yeah, I mean, each leftist has all 50 of their personalities call in to complain.
Right,
Right, exactly.
That's right. All their headmates.
Yes. Yeah. I just wanted to say before we move on from this topic is that one of the best ways that you can do this kind of activism is to call your local GOP. Like if you're in Tennessee listening to this, you should talk to the GOP there in Tennessee and tell them that you're not okay with this.
They're crooked.
Oh,
people
for sure.
people need to protest.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
volunteer. And, for instance, on the election systems, if you don't like the way elections are run, go and participate in
Yes.
running elections.
I'd also
You
like
can
to
get
build-
hired. I mean, the unions, they get hired. They make it a point to get hired to count votes. Well, Republicans and conservatives should make it a point to be hired and count votes. That's the way to ensure that elections are more fairly run. Actually count the votes according to the law.
At the time, we have a corporation tallying votes in private, which is Dominion, for the last presidential election, which is incredibly disturbing. I think we need to also, in addition to what you're saying, Tom, build a parallel system where you can vote in their system and vote in this system that's transparent and see if it lines up.
No.
Yes.
No, Ian.
Well, no, and
You know
yes,
what we
Tim.
have to do? We have to free the code.
You're right. Of big technology firms that are functioning in the commons, their code needs to be free. This is
No,
the
no, no,
free.
no, no,
This
no.
is the freedom of speech of the 21st century.
Voting.
We need to free the software code of the voting machines. Yeah, we need to be able to reference those.
These companies that are doing digital vote counting, that code needs to be public, and here's what needs to happen: before the election, there should be an audit where a person from each party and an independent goes in with an approved tech person who then audits the code and presents it to the public and says, here's how the code of this machine works. Every single line is available for public viewing.
I feel like even then they could give you the code and say this is how it works, but then go in the back room and make it do other things with
but
that
or-
code. So you need it on a blockchain too.
Honestly, I think they're bold enough that they would show you the actual code, and if anyone pointed out any problems with it, fact check, false. There is no problem with the code. It's
Not
only
if
a
you've
conspiracy
got,
theory.
No, because remember when Democrats were screaming there was going to be fraud in the election, like in was it 2019 or something? They were like, we got to do something about this, and then they all started shutting up. When you have before an election and no one knows how things are going to swing, you see one thing wrong, and the Democrat is going to be like, no, and the Republican's going to be like, no, fix it, we object, because they don't want to
Unless
lose.
someone's in on it.
Well, my view on these companies, Dominion and Smartmatic, they've come up with these outrageous lawsuits against critics that seem to me mighty political and over the top. And, we want these companies to be neutral, right? And it seems to me they've thrown down the gauntlet on one side of the political narrative when it comes to our elections. And I would be very suspicious, whether their code works or not, about letting them work in any states.
Yeah, the thing that they're going after is people claiming that they're fraudulent. I'm not making that claim. I'm claiming that I can't see the code, so I don't know if it's fraudulent or not.
Well, I think whether you see the code or not is almost irrelevant to the question of, are we counting ballots in a way that people are confident that the individuals casting the ballots are eligible to vote? And I don't think that's true. If the code works, illegal votes will be counted accurately.
But I think
That's not going to solve the problem.
I'm not. The issue is so much deeper than just, I suppose, illegal voting, because you can track those things down. But if California opens their border up and says, come on in, and then the census happens and they're like, look how many more people we get, and they get more votes in the Electoral College, it doesn't matter if the individual votes. All that matters is we know Texas will be blue, and Texas can effectively stuff the Electoral College ballot by bringing in non-citizens.
The system should be set up in a way to, and I think you're highlighting the issue, to reassure people that their votes are going to be counted and counted accurately, and the election result is going to be something approximate to what actually happened. The winner won. Whether it's exact or not, the winner won. And right now, half the country doesn't think that's the system. And so we need to reassure the public. We need to save elections by requiring voter ID, maybe getting rid of the computer counting or make it a lot more easily watchable, and having one day only voting, only emergency absentee voting. If you're getting your head shot off abroad and you're in the military, maybe, that warrants you getting a special treatment. Everyone else show up. But the idea that you're voting out there without any supervision, any party looking at you to make sure you're not being intimidated, or outside the protection of security and our government processes. It's an open opportunity for fraud. And when people don't have confidence in the system collapses.
Well, I'll put it this way. If someone invited you over to their house in, the middle of a big city, let's say Chicago. Chicago's a good example. And they said, you can crash here. We have no doors or windows. They're basically just all exposed and open. And no one will, we've never filmed anybody coming in here, so we don't think it's an issue. Would you be comfortable chilling in there and leaving your stuff and going to bed? You're like, nah, I don't. I'm gonna keep my bag close to I'm gonna wrap my arms around the backpack as I go to sleep, because you'd be like, I'm not okay with this. It's not an issue of whether or not someone did or is in the act of committing an illegal act. It's that, why would you want to participate in an insecure system? Like, hey, come crash at my house while you're in Chicago. The doors, the front door and the back door are completely off the hinges, and the windows have all been removed, but you can sleep wherever you want. You'd be like, nah, I'm good.
Or you go to the bank and they've got black paint over all the cameras, and you give cash to someone standing out front who says, don't worry, I'll get it to the teller. And the teller doesn't keep any records of who gave it to the money and where the money's supposed to be going. You have to have a system in place that survives basic scrutiny. It ain't going to be perfect. I mean, we were doing an analysis of voter roll lists in New York and California, Oregon. In New York, I think they removed 10 names in the entire city over the last 4 years. They should have removed hundreds of thousands of names. So you've got the list are full of people who have moved away, and that's just like a big pool of voters to pull from illegally to engage in fraud. And that undermines the system. And the courts have found, interestingly, Tim, that you don't need to prove fraud in order to justify these rules. It's the appearance of fraud and the opportunities for fraud that states have an interest in stopping, to reassure voters that your vote's going to be counted. So the left says we don't have to prove fraud in order to justify voter ID and to make sure that people are actually citizens, for instance, before they're allowed to vote, which is, to me, the voter ID everyone agrees with. Well, it doesn't work if non-citizens can get that type of voter ID that allows them to vote.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.